Up next, we're talking about a film from 1999 that takes the next giant leap forward in special effects. Plug in and enter the Matrix. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast, your weekly dose of music and movie goodness. Soup to nuts, Eric. We cover it all, or most of it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. Glad to be back.
Yeah, Eric
my
is
little,
back
my
in
little,
this.
My little sabbatical.
His little soiree. He was in the pest tent in Deadwood, in the sick tent.
My little dance with the flu. Yeah, this thing was, I don't know what it is, but I pretty certain that I had COVID. Not that I ever was verified, or because I kept taking tests and it was negative the whole time. But I'm pretty sure I had it. But that was nothing compared to what the hell. I mean, I don't know what the hell this thing was.
Yeah.
And it really. And it's going around, and I kept getting it, and it's just, it just kept recycling. So it just.
That's why we do this remotely. That's why I have Eric live in a totally different state from me.
Yeah.
This way it doesn't spread. It's localized. So, Eric, welcome back, Eric. Glad that you're feeling better. We certainly missed you. It was only one episode. It seems like a lot, but it was.
Hey, you know what? That episode was fantastic. I really enjoyed the Miracle on 34th Street episode. It really kind of put the spirit in me, this year. It's a little difficult, but it actually, got my spirits up. So thank you guys for that. Yeah.
Eric listened to that after he chugged the Robitussin, so that put the spirit in him as well. So anyway, there's a treasure trove, well over 150 episodes for you to go back. If you're new to this podcast, there's a lot there for you to pick and choose from. And it's always fun when you find a new podcast to go back and see what the back catalog is. And you don't have to go in order. That's the great thing about podcasts. You can kind of pick and choose. You want to do a run of movies, or you want to do a run of music, or some of our top fives. It's all there in whatever order you see fit. So by all means, if it's your first time here, thanks for joining us. Hope you like it. I've now set the bar high for our two guests. Our first guest, Mr. Nick Leshy, Agent Nick. Yes, you're not wearing any sunglasses though, Nick. You got that.
Do you remember when I wore you called, Agent Smith? It was the Reservoir Dogs. So I was trying to be like, so that was fun.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That didn't.
So if I wore that, you would have been like, "Why are you doing a Quentin Tarantino thing?" So
I would have said that. I would have said, "Why are you just like Mr. Brown?" So Nick is the author, creator, purveyor of the City of Kick blog. We'll drop a link in the show notes. Go check that out. He covers everything, and he covers it really well. And he goes into detail, and he leaves no stone unturned. So I really like his writing style and the way he presents his spin on entertainment. So welcome aboard, Nick.
Thank you.
Making it his second triumphant appearance. He is we can still call him Emmy nominated, because when his first appearance was during the strike, and the Emmys, as of the publishing of this episode, the Emmys still have not occurred yet. They will occur they will be announced in January. So he is an Emmy nominated producer.
All right.
For AMC Network, Mr. Kevin Howard, and a good friend of mine as well.
Hey, Dean. Hey, everybody.
Welcome.
How are you?
Welcome.
Good to be back.
Mm-hmm. But you know what? He's not doing us any favors by I see like a row of awards behind him, and that's just like,
you can see
yeah, of course I can see those. I look at everything.
Oh, how embarrassing!
Yeah, you could take the wide angle lens off your webcam. Go back to selfie view. Kevin, it's great to have you back on. Been dying to get you back for another episode. So
yeah.
We're going to be talking about the Matrix. So let's dive in. Let's enter the Matrix. I know it's corny, but we were there for it. Anyway, released in March of 1999, directed by the Wachowskis, written by the Wachowskis, a paltry $63 million budget, and a massive $467 million box office. This was, like I said in the open, this was another watershed moment in filmmaking. Nominated for 4 Oscars, and it won all 4. It won everything it was nominated for. film editing, best sound effects editing, and of course, visual effects. That was visual effects is the bread and butter of this film. It really was what everybody was talking about. Now I'm going to assume that we all saw it in the theaters when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. That was, where we were old enough to be of age. And much like in our Jurassic Park episode, I think I'll speak for myself. Everybody else will go around too. Is as we were watching this, as I was watching this, this was something special was happening. And we were seeing something different, much like in Jurassic Park with the dinosaurs or with T2, the way that the T-1000 was created. The stuff that was done in the Matrix was that next leap forward in special effects. Nick, we'll start with you. I mean, what was your go back to 1999 and put yourself back into that headspace if you can.
Yeah, that was the year Phantom Menace came out, right? Wasn't it?
Yes,
We're not talking about that. We're not talking. Why did you say that?
Because that was the science fiction movie that everybody was buzzing about back then, right?
Of course.
And this, I'll be honest, came out of the blue for me. I didn't know what to expect, and special effects were amazing. And it's the kind of thing where it's like the Wachowskis took a lot of like inspiration from anime and cyberpunk and Harlan Ellison and Superman comics and mashed them all together. So there's a lot of familiar stuff. Obviously, the Asian martial arts movies and the Wire Fu and all that stuff. But this was the first time in a mainstream American movie that you saw all that together and done so well. I mean, this just revolutionized to me science fiction movies, and it spawned so many imitators afterwards. And so it just blew me away when I first saw it on the big screen.
Kevin, what about you? Same thing?
Yeah. I was 15 when this came out, so I was just the absolute prime audience.
Wait, that was an R-rated. This is an R-rated film.
At the time, it was easy to get into. Unfortunately, Columbine was like a month after this came out, and that was kind of the end of getting into R-rated movies as a teenager. And that was a big summer for R-rated movies. You had Eyes Wide Shut, Summer of Sam, American Beauty came down the line. So what this movie inspired was I got a fake ID. But I didn't make myself 21. I just made myself 18.
There you go.
I didn't even need to drink with it. I was just like, I want to see all these movies this year.
Kevin knew what was important. It was about getting into films, not about getting beer. I mean, that's, whatever. It's about getting into R-rated films. That's called priorities.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's called priorities. Eric?
We never had that problem, though, did we, Dean? We didn't have a problem getting into R-rated films.
Because we're so old that we just used to walk in. They didn't care. They cared even less. As long as you put the lettuce on the counter, you had the greenery. They took it.
That's right. Yeah. I was blown away. I mean, this was right up my alley. Being a big, huge cyberpunk Blade Runner guy. The year before, Proyas's Dark City. I love that film, which I think is extremely underrated. So I was kind of, I kind of, didn't know what it fully was. I mean, what is the Matrix? It was intriguing, but as it unfolded on screen, it was like, wow, this is something else. This was, it was absolutely, taken in. And by the end of it, you're just like, all the great, it hit all the right marks. I think it wasn't too cerebral, where it was totally that, but it had just enough action. It just, really kind of, they knew how to satisfy an audience with this film,
Yeah. And it hit on a lot of different levels. Like you said, there's the sci-fi, there's the action, there's the kung fu, there's the philosophical, there's the religious overtones. There's so many different layers that you can kind of start to pick apart. And if you think about that, if someone had told you, well, this deals with all this and more, you'd probably be like, oh, yeah, this is going to be a hot dumpster fire of a film. But yeah, the way it's handled, I think that was the important part. Before we go any further, let's go a little prehistory about it, just a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about casting, because I thought this was very interesting. Will Smith was offered this role first. And he said no, because I'm working on a very important film that's going to be a big one, and it's called Wild Wild West. So it's amazing. But I love talking about these alternate casting decisions because that was going to be that was supposed to be the tentpole movie of that year. That was like Will Smith was on a hot streak and he was kind of in a can't miss mode. So there would be no reason to think that Wild Wild West would not be another bullseye. And not only was it not a bullseye, it didn't even hit the target it was aiming for. It just totally missed. So he kind of passed on it. Nicolas Cage was offered the role next. Brad Pitt, Val Kilmer was also offered the role, and then Leonardo DiCaprio was offered it, and he declined it because he had just done Titanic, and he didn't want to do another effects heavy film. He had just finished Titanic, and he didn't want to get involved with another effects heavy film. So they finally get down to Keanu Reeves. And I think we need to, Keanu Reeves does not fit. All deference to Keanu Reeves. We have to put ourselves back in 1999. Keanu Reeves does not fit in that list of actors at that time.
No.
Right? He was known for Speed. He was known for Bill and Ted, Speed, and then the movie he did before The Matrix was The Devil's Advocate, which is one of the worst movies. Like
Al Pacino. Yes,
it's what I mean. You watch. It's like Showgirls. You watch Devil's Advocate because it's so horrible. It's just one of those films. I think that. I mean.
It was pretty bad. I think Pacino was definitely capitalizing on trying to. Oh well, De Niro did it. He played Satan, and
Angel Heart.
Angel Heart, sorry.
Angel Heart.
Yeah. And did it very well, but Pacino was just.
Yeah, but Keanu Reeves is just not. He was not known as
also Bram Stoker's Dracula. Let's not forget that.
Jonathan Harker.
That brilliant performance right there, which was
So he was not known. Keanu Reeves was not known as like a master thespian. It was just he was an actor. He was plugging away. He did movies like Chain Reaction. I mean, he wasn't doing big roles that kind of needed a stretch. Even Speed was kind of like, he was just, it almost could have been anybody. Again, nothing. He wasn't John Wick yet, Kevin, right? I think that's the point I'm trying to make is now he's a much beloved, he's iconic. Back then he wasn't.
And I mean, he was Surfer Bro. He also had done Point Break. A couple of years before.
Johnny Utah.
And when was Johnny Mnemonic? That was
before this, but it was in this.
That too. I mean, I think the only thing to his cred, I think probably the most credible thing that he might have done was My Private Idaho with River Phoenix. So that was kind of more sort of serious role, weird but esoteric, but just kind of like. But he gave that sort of dramatic thing, and I think it was a good performance. But it's like he's really known for the action thing, for the sort of like. The sullen, like just full on action pose and the face and
because he's kind of a wooden actor, Nick, right? I mean, Keanu Reeves really wasn't known for, those big performances. He was just kind of the guy that was there, and he's like, whoa, and
you mentioned whoa. That was the line that kind of epitomizes what he was known for at the time. But he did a really good job doing it, and. He lost like a bunch of weight for that one scene where he comes out of the womb and he had some neck problems, didn't he? Like he got hurt, and so he couldn't. Some of the kung fu stuff he wanted to do even more, and he wasn't able to do some of the leg kicks. But this put him on the map. I think beyond what he was known for at that time. This was like one of his top movies.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and Nick makes a good point with the pre-production. Keanu Reeves had a herniated disc, I believe, in his neck. He had neck surgery. He had they had to arrange filming around. They had to film like some of the tamer stuff first until he could heal. This was kind of, he doesn't have a lot of lines in this film, Eric. I mean, think about it. Again, he's more reactionary and like the things that happen around him. And that's probably his strong suit, right?
Absolutely. That's what he does best. I think it is very reactionary. It's in his face. It tells everything, and you believe it, like Nick was saying about that scene alone. It was just the horror that he feels when he realizes the truth. And then when he comes out of that, and it's just like, you felt that scene where he just like gets up and he's just like, and Patagliano's like, he's about to pop, and he just like, he upchucks whatever the hell that is coming out of him. But it's just, but yeah, I felt every moment of that. It was very, very physical. And that's pretty much, I think, what they were going for. I think that's probably the reason why they cast him, because he's such a physical, reactionary type of.
Yeah. Kevin, what do you think the fact that he was more of a blank slate actor, Reeves, that it actually allows him to slide into this role a little better, that he didn't bring DiCaprio post Titanic, it became DiCaprio, and Brad Pitt was already a known factor, and Val Kilmer had already done Batman, so they were since Reeves was kind of under the radar, even since Speed, that was like 3 or 4 years before. Do you think that makes it easier to slide into this type of a role?
Hell yeah. I mean, he's an audience surrogate in this movie. He's discovering that. I went in knowing nothing. All I had seen was like a Real Player 2-inch wide trailer on whatisthematrix.com. I had no idea. And our minds are being blown. So if everybody on that screen was in on whatever the hell they were talking about, you've lost the audience. But he's more like an avatar in a role-playing game. Like he's you can select which of 3 questions to ask next, but it's always going to be somebody else explaining something to you until the end, when you have this monologue where it's like, I have awakened. Now I'm part of this. I'm coming for you.
Great point.
Very interesting take on that, especially since we just did Edge of Tomorrow recently, which was the same type of thing where you're kind of the player, or you're taking it from the player's respawn each time. So, let's go over the cast just before we get into that, because this movie also is helped by the cast. I don't think Keanu Reeves would have been able to carry this without the help of the great Lawrence Fishburne, who totally is literally, I think, the pillar of this film. His devotion to the character and Morpheus's belief in everything that he is doing, I think grounds this film. So let's go through it. So Keanu Reeves as Neo, or Mr. Anderson. And here's our first little religious tip off: is you scramble the words of Neo and you get one, and they keep saying he's the one, and there's your kind of Christ-like.
How long did that take, Dean?
I was today years old when I finally scrambled those words. Oh, that's one.
Yeah.
I thought it was Owen. Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus, Carrie-Anne Moss as Trinity. There's another religious, Trinity, wink and a nod. Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. It's the smell.
The stink of the. You
felt
that too, man. Oh my God! You just
he's pushing his fingers in Morpheus.
Oh my God, that's the
the great Joe Pantoliano as Cypher, Marcus Chong as Tank, Matt Doran as Mouse, Rowan Witt as the Spoon Boy. He's only in it for 1 second, but he's like the very pivotal thing. The spoon does not exist. Anthony Ray Parker as Dozer, and then Julian Arahanga as APOC, and Belinda McCory as Switch. And they're kind of, if you've never seen The Matrix, we're gonna spoil some of it for you. But basically, it takes place supposedly in 1999, but it's actually, or people think it takes place in 1999, but it actually takes place in a future where they've kind of lost a little track of time, so they're not entirely sure. And people are living their lives not knowing that they're actually, as Switch said, copper tops. They're actually human battery, human energy sources for what we feared would happen, I guess, in Terminator 2. The machines take over. And in this case, the machines, started to run out of energy to power themselves. And they actually figured out that you can use people, and you can liquefy dead people and use that as a source of energy. And all these people get plugged in as just to power the Matrix. But what they get in exchange is they think that they're actually living their lives. And
what's ironic too is the fact that humanity did it to themselves, right? Because the machines take over. This wasn't, it wasn't like necessarily a nuclear war type of deal, but they to fight back against the machines, they scorched the sky, so the sun cannot shine through, so they couldn't get their energy. So in effect, mankind is constantly dooming themselves, by just fucking themselves up by what they think is the right thing to do, but it's like they end up being this turns into a whole other
lesson
thing.
Not learned once again.
Absolutely, yeah.
We keep making movies about it. Mad Max, the Road Warrior.
Yeah, have we learned our lesson yet? No, I don't think so.
We kind of keep giving ourselves subtle hints.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's a faction of people that have were able to leave the Matrix, and they are actually, they're awake and alive and not part of the Matrix, and they're trying to free as many other people as they can so they can get back to Zion and eventually defeat the machines. But there is a prophecy about the one person that will you be the one to unite everybody or to defeat the machines, and it turns out it's Keanu Reeves, and he's told this and he doesn't really believe it. We get the famous red pill, blue pill, which has become a part of our lexicon nowadays with the manosphere, and you're getting red pilled about not believing things, and people think that we are actually in some type of a matrix where we're being shielded from things. Anyway, that scene, when I watched that scene today, I don't know why I never thought of it before, but it brought me back to Total Recall with Arnold.
Mm-hmm.
When Arnold, when the guy comes in and he's got the pill, and he's like, eat the pill. If you take the pill, you'll return to you'll return to your life. You'll return to reality. If not, you'll be lobotomized. And
well, this
like immediately, I'm like, wow, like I was starting to pick up on where these guys might have taken things from.
Oh, there's so much
everywhere.
It's just like everywhere. Tarantino with like Kill Bill in that sense, where in his films there's just so many it's one of those films that is so influenced, and yet it influenced an entire new audience, new generation for a new age. And it's just taking those things and really knowing how to combine it, knowing the recipe of how to put it together, and just putting it out there. That's the key. That's is knowing exactly how to get that right. And it's hard. It's difficult. A lot of people have tried and failed. In this case, it was a success. So
a lot of Alice in Wonderland motifs there. So even eat this or drink me. It's like that kind of thing. So you take some NyQuil tablets, and that becomes the But it's very cool. But it's interesting how they use Alice in Wonderland so often. Follow the rabbit and down the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
and then Cypher makes that Dorothy and Wizard of Oz reference early. So there's like a first foreshadowing that maybe he's not like the others, or like a twist, like he wants to go home. He doesn't want to. So it's very clever. I didn't catch that the first time, but
there's a lot.
You hear it afterwards.
Touches the looking glass and it.
Yes. A lot of mirrors everywhere.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's Kevin, the scene where he touches the mirror, and that's when it envelops him, right? That's what you're talking about. Cool. So many different influences, but the great thing about this film is, like I said, this is a mishmash, and it's literally a hodgepodge, but it is centered in, they've got their universe figured out where all this stuff exists. And that's the great thing about it is you can't kind of bluff your way through this. And I think the Wachowskis had this well thought out of what is the universe? What is the story of this, where these people exist? So this way they're able to incorporate all those things, and it's not like spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. They really kind of, you can spot the influence in this film, but it all works, and because it's all put together in their way, it comes out of something different. Like I said, like Nick said, the wire work. They got Yuen Yo-ping from all the karate and martial arts films in Asia. He's the expert on wire work, so they got him. They developed.
Yeah, big John Woo influence as well with the gunplay in this film. It's like that choreographed, gorgeous, slow motion stuff where I'm surprised they didn't have birds. They should have put the doves in there somewhere, right? That would have been the clincher. But yeah, I mean, just absolutely the influence is just brilliant.
Yeah. And then you've got new technology that they invented, which is called bullet time. So you're incorporating tried and true things, but you're amping them up. The wire work was brought to a new level, or a level unseen by American audiences. Like Eric said, the extreme gunplay, which was something we were used to with Face Off and some of these other, as John Woo came to America. And then you've got Bullet Time, which is what the Wachowskis are, the innovation that they're bringing. So you're putting all these three things together. And I think they're actually kind of used sparingly. That's the thing that could have sunk this, is when you really think about Bullet Time, it really wasn't used. They could have said, here's our new toy. And we're going to use it as much. The guy's taking a dump on the toilet and it spins. I mean, they could have used like they could have really worn out its welcome, right? Because when you get a new toy, you want to use it, But they had so many other pieces that with the wire work and the martial arts and the gunplay that they were able to strike the balance. So you were exposed to a lot of different things used sparingly. It makes a cornucopia of effects, Nick.
Yeah,
it does.
To barge in.
Yeah,
of course.
I think this might have been my last time in a theater where I saw a special effect and I didn't know how they did it. Because since then, you can explain everything with CGI, and even a little bit before then. Yeah. Bullet Time, I couldn't figure it out. Like, I couldn't do the math of it. And I think they even took a long time to figure it out. They were like, can we attach a camera to a rocket and spin it around? Yeah. And then they're like, oh, no, multiple cameras. That's
regular cameras, photographic cameras, photographic
go.
Cameras in a row, or
camera effects.
or however they wanted to sync you see cameras kind of sloping down to get the right camera angle. Amazing stuff. I mean, we see that within the first 5 minutes with Trinity. We get a small dose of that when she does her crane kick and it stops and spins around. But that was kind of static. That was almost like a still, almost like a proof of concept, because much later in the film, we get the Bullet Time more active, like when Neo is kind of falling backwards, avoiding the bullets, and it's moving around him, and he's still moving. So it was new technology, but I think we should be grateful that they just didn't plaster the film with and say, well, we could just put it in every time. It's like,
unfortunately, every director under the sun did it afterwards. Which is, to Dean's point, they overdid it. A lot of these films, just even Shrek. I mean, they just that little moment in Shrek. It was funny. I mean, it was built for laughs, but it was just, I think that's the reason why the sequels didn't work as well.
I was going to say the same thing.
So many people have just, saturated.
But they also, the sequels did more just for the sake of doing more, right? Like, it wasn't so much like doing it right. It was more like, how do we top it? How do we add more? How do we do all that? But to what you said, that first scene with Trinity, that was a proof of concept, because I think that was one of the first things they shot, and they went back to the studio, and the studio was like, yeah, we're all in. Let's do it. Because it looked so different and so cool. Yep.
Yeah, just to touch on sequels, since Nick brought it up. Hasn't anybody learned anything from Back to the Future yet?
No.
Don't make back-to-back sequels, and B, just don't make sequels because you feel you have to. Well, I remember watching the first sequel which is Matrix
Reloaded.
And I'm like, I checked out. I was like, this is
same here.
Yeah, I don't need it. I didn't bother.
That movie was a waste of time. Literally, I mean, both, and the movie itself it's designed to waste your time, because it's all BS to begin with. Everything, they totally undermine everything that happened in the first movie by making it more complex, and you're just kind of like, what the hell?
The key holder, the key master,
and by the third film, it was all bullshit anyway. They, they said it was all nothing. Like the architect and all this, it was all, and they. It was,
but you know what? The good thing was, Kevin got in underage still. He was able to get in on that film.
I was all in on the sequels. The Reloaded came out on May 15th. That's my birthday. And the teaser poster was this aluminum foily, shiny Matrix code that said 515. I was like, I want that poster. My dad never forgave me for making him take me to see that movie. And
I don't blame your dad.
It's the same problem that the Austin Powers sequels have, where they were they misinterpreted what worked about the first one and just gave us more of what they thought we liked. Like the first Austin Powers, it's 60s cinema turned on its head and it works. And you don't realize that that's why it's funny, but that's what the jokes stem from.
Absolutely.
But they were like, no, they just want more mini-me and whatever. And this was like, oh, screw that philosophy stuff. They didn't like any of that. Just more fights. For no reason.
That was the appeal. It was a man called Flint and James Bond and that early stuff. It was great. But yeah, then it became all about dick and fart jokes. That was the whole.
I'm going to be the dissenting opinion. I thought that I enjoyed the trilogy. I thought they were all because it was the same thing over and over. They didn't try and give you something different. You wanted those jokes, and
but that was Back to the Future too. The same jokes, same thing. By the third one, you just kind of tapped out. You're like, "What? Shut up!"
But for those, I still enjoyed the Back to the Future movies. They never reached the level of the first one. Same thing with Austin Powers. But for the Matrix sequels, I went in excited because I loved the first one so much, and it just had no emotional resonance for me. It had no story. It was like you were saying, like they just kind of were like, okay, what can we do? Just add more, build up more fights, instead of carrying it forward. What we wanted to know more about Morpheus. We wanted to know more about Trinity, and it was kind of like just more like there was that one scene. Yeah, but this movie is what we're talking about. The first Matrix, which rocked.
Let me give a shout out to our frequent guest Andy Cremines, who is, I have to say, is a huge fan of the trilogy. He likes the sequels. The aspect that he really liked about it was they really leaned into the Christ allegory and the whole and he said it. This was a direct quote from him. He's like, it's the Superman movie we didn't get up to that point. Because we only had the Chris Reeve movies, we all know like the sequels to those were by that point. So, but it's a shame, I'm watching the third one with him, and when he's fighting Agent Smith at the, the big finale, and they're flying and they're all this stuff, and he goes, too bad this wasn't Superman, and he had a point, this is as good as it's going to get. And it was bad, it was just just wasn't that good, So
if you want to see some interesting spin-offs of it, Animatrix, a selection of shorts, animated movies, because they took ideas from the first one and told stories. So that was really good.
Came out, I absolutely loved that.
Yeah, that was part and parcel of the whole Matrix experience, was the Animatrix, which had come out on DVD and video, and you can kind of check that out, and it's kind of adjunct material to it. But thank you, Nick, for trying to get us back on track. He was,
I'm sorry for taking us.
I'm usually the one that's got to do that. I'm usually like, Nick was like, we're here to talk about the Matrix.
No, because it was so disappointing.
Well, it needs to be. I think it needs to be addressed because like I said, I don't know if the Wachowskis had this all mapped out, or did they?
Probably not.
I would say not, because that back-to-back thing. Okay, what could we do to expand upon this? And it just didn't.
There's that 20-minute dance scene, like when they get to Zion and
the rave,
I'm like, all right, I get it, but it was like that tells me that you ran out of gas. Like if you
absolutely
do even the extended scene on the freeway, like when you're doing long scenes, you kind of ran out of gas. If you can't say it quickly and tightly, and that's what's so great about the Matrix is they kind of you get the karate training scene. It's not a 20-minute scene. It's quick. He learns a little and he fails, and then they move on to whatever the next thing is. They kind of keep moving the story along, and they don't stop. Right. And because they can't, because they've got a lot of information they've got to get to. And it's not an overindulgent film. It probably could have been 3 hours. But by keeping it tight, keeping the script and the exposition tight, Morpheus is kind of our, like Kevin said, we're kind of learning through Morpheus what the philosophy is. It's not just waking people up, but it's something more. It's about getting out of that and fighting back. And I love that. I love that that connection you made, Kevin. Like we're kind of the avatars for that and kind of learning about it. So very interesting. And there is a character called the Oracle And she's the one that prophesizes everything. So it's kind of like the big thing is, well, when you're ready, we're going to go see the Oracle. The Oracle will tell you. I've got a question. Anybody can answer it. They go see the Oracle, right? And I don't, maybe this was addressed in later films. I forgot the second one. I know the actress passed away and they got a different actress for it.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But they go see the Oracle. But as I'm watching it, I'm like, they're going to see the Oracle in the Matrix. So is the Oracle a computer program? Why, if the Oracle was, why wouldn't they be like where? If not, let me put. Let me put the second. Wait. Let me put the second question onto it. If the Oracle is not a computer program, then where is the Oracle in real life that the Oracle is connecting into the Matrix? Yeah. So there we go. Who's going to go first? Who's going to go first?
Kevin.
It is addressed, I think, in the third one, because in the second one you meet the architect, and then in the third one, I think she says, "If the architect is the Matrix's father, I'm the Matrix's mother." So I believe there are two different AIs. I think one was structure, and she was like the style, what the world is going to be like, perceived to humans. So she is an AI who I guess isn't completely omnipotent because she didn't create the whole thing, but she's aware. She's like timeless. Of almost all the code. Yeah.
She's like aware of space and time, so she can tell like kind of the future and
I believe it was
the paths you can take.
The architect in the second one, I think he even tells Neo, he reveals to Neo that she's a program. As I am, like it's like, it's to him, it's like, oh, it's a bit of a downer for him because he's, realizing that, wait a minute now. So that's what's so confusing about it is what's good, what's bad, are the machines or who's controlling what at this point. So you're just kind of lost so they just kind of like really did that on purpose just to confuse you for no good reason. Some of the one thing I did pick up in that scene then, because I started thinking about it is, first we need to talk about the use of the color green, which is throughout the film. And it's kind of this like font, it's like the CRT font green that you kind of see throughout. And the Oracle is wearing a green apron. Yeah.
So, and behind her on the kitchen, on top of the refrigerator is a green, and there's also a green phone book with a Yellow Pages phone book. Like she has two different phone books and one is green, but she's wearing a green apron. So it made me start thinking, it's like, well, okay. Because then I was like, well, where is she? If she's in the Matrix and she's real, she must have a physical body somewhere, but I guess she's not. So thank you.
I think it's almost, there's visual cues throughout, like, the window washer in the beginning, you see like lines of code. It's lines of code, like going down the window. So in a way,
the rain in the car,
it's
like
almost,
when you're in the car in the background, it's just like coming down.
It's almost like it's like Neo it's right there in front of him the whole time. And when it's finally revealed at the end that he could see past the the Matrix and see the code, and it's like finally, I thought that was absolutely So again, like in the kitchen, you have those visual cues as well. So it's it's rampant throughout. As you go back, you could probably find more, I'm sure,
There's a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of glitches here and there too, a purpose. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like every time they make a change, it's like foreshadowing something's going to happen because they changed it. You saw that little glitch, and then they draw attention to the cat. They're like
deja
explaining.
Vu. Whoa, yeah. What? I had deja vu.
Was it the same cat or a different cat?
The same.
What? I love the tense that the moment, like everything tenses up. The music starts to play, like, it's like, what was that? And it's just like, and Keanu's just like, he's like, I don't know. I think it was the same. Like he's just Keanu in that moment. Like, and he's like, oh, whoa, like he might as well have said it. But I love that. Yeah, it's just so good.
Yeah,
and that leads to one of the most disturbing scenes because amongst the people in the real world is a traitor, and Cypher, Joe Pantoliano, Joey Pants, decides that he's had enough of reality and enough of the bland food and the gray interiors of the Nebuchadnezzar ship. That he wants to go back into the Matrix and he, almost like basically ignorance is bliss. He's at that point. He's like, he goes, I know this steak isn't real when he's talking with Agent Smith. I know it's not real. I know it's fake. I know I'm not tasting it, but wow, it's good.
And you know my pet peeve about food, Dean.
Rare meat.
The fact that people don't eat in movies, like there's all that food that's a scene that I love because he puts that steak in his mouth and he's enjoying it. You know what that tastes like. You know exactly what he's trying to point out there, and that's great. And then he chases it down with the wine. I'm in. I want to go there. So and that's what's so great. It's like they knew how to capture those moments. They knew how to get to the audience that way. That it's so good.
Yeah, something simple as steak or wine or that's more when you get so world weary and you're so tired, and I guess he has the part of Cypher's problem is he thinks Morpheus has some type of a god complex or like, I'm tired of listening to him. I'm tired of hearing what he has to say. I'm tired of following. I mean, he really kind of, and that's just a horrible scene when he starts pulling the plug.
Yeah.
When he's talking to Trinity, he goes, and you have to watch this, and then and she looks at APOC and he's like, no, and then he just like drops.
Not like this.
And Switch and probably the most affecting part of that scene for me was Switch, and she goes, not like this. Like she's like, not like this. Like it shouldn't. This is not the way. Like if I'm going to die, it shouldn't. This is not how it should be happening. We shouldn't be. She's like laying over APOC, and not like this, not like this, and then she just drops. There's those moments as well. Like they're because you did get to know, even though you didn't spend a ton of time, you saw that these guys were a team. They would go into the Matrix together. They would kind of do things. At that point, Morpheus had been captured, so they were already missing like their leader. So there's a lot of good beats. It's not just all. It's actually there's not a. If you think about it, there's not a ton of action. It's just we remember the action because it's so well executed.
Yeah, and the acting there, like you say, it's a fellow human being that's doing this. It's not a machine. And that's the horrific thing about it. It's
one of their inner circle too. It wasn't just somebody they met that came in and now they betrayed them. This is somebody who's been with them on a couple of missions and bringing new people in and training them, and so that's where it hurts the most, I think.
So. Trying to free people. That was their thing. Now, I found a little contradiction there because I think in the beginning we want to free as many people as we can. But they killed a lot of innocent people in this movie.
Yes,
I mean, let's pick this apart. Now, they go when they're going to go rescue Morpheus, Kevin. Right? They're going to go. We're going to go get him, and they get the guns, and they go into the building. They go into the lobby with all the marble. Those guys are just security guards. They're in the Matrix. Their job in their life is just to be a security guard, right?
Eating donuts. Yeah.
Just they're not expecting people to try and walk in with all kinds of weaponry and then they're getting blown away. So they're,
that's one of my, I even had a problem with it when I first saw it in the theater. I was like kind of squeamish and I was like, it's glorification of violence and all that stuff. But, these are people, some of them are, non-player act, non-character act, whatever it was.
NPCs.
But there's real people, but that's where like the conspiracy, the dark side of the Matrix comes out. People were like maybe it motivated some people. Columbine happened right after. You can't make the connection because those kids were planning this. This only came out like a month or two before that happened. But the glamorization of guns and all that. But so the mentality of those people who are kind of like taking this kind of stuff, like we're all in a simulation, or the rich people control the world. It's like they just don't care who they're killing, because if they are innocent people, they're like, they don't know what they're losing. They don't realize that they're just slaves hooked up to something. So that is that dark side of this movie that maybe doesn't hold up well. Maybe people are reading too much into it, but it is that violence and that scene. I think still kind of, I feel, shakes me up a little bit when I watch that.
I mean, all the other times I've watched it, it never bothered me. I was just thinking from the standpoint of, well, these guys are just kind of like, they're in the Matrix inserted and that's their career. They're like the guards. Now, are they part of like whatever the agents? Are they part of that bad thing? Are they inherently bad? If so, well then yeah, kill them.
Do they? Yeah. Do they know this? Do they? Are they aware of something that the audience is not at that point? It's like because I mean they take over the bodies. The agents come in and they insert themselves. Do they know this beforehand? Do they know that these guys are like targets in that way? So I mean that's the only thing I could think of is like why would they go, such. Just blatantly kill these people for no
because it's violence porn. I mean, that was that scene that was like back in the 90s. That was the Rambos and just like blowing them up. And I mean, when I was in the theater, they were cheering in that scene. The audience was up on its feet, like whoa. When it's like I want guns, lots of guns. They're like yeah. So it's it's a little dated nowadays, and especially after all, you see how people use gun violence and stuff, but. I mean, like you mentioned John Woo and all these others. It's like it's that stylization that really was the vogue back then, and this took it to like a level never before seen. I think
Yeah, the slow mo of the gun shells hitting the ground like that. It was. It wasn't just gunplay. It wasn't like Arnold Schwarzenegger Commando style gunplay. There was a balletic aspect to it, right, Kevin? The choreography in that scene, in that lobby scene, there is. It's fluid. It's almost dance-like. When
it is, and
so there is something to it. So yeah, it's couched in violence, but there's something else there.
And there's this like reverence for the gunplay because I don't think before this movie I understood that bullets spin and corkscrew
when they come out.
Or that the shell ejects from the top. But like every mechanic of a gun is just on full display here. And there's almost this beauty to it, and of course these well-oiled machines that are taking over the world. But I mean, everybody just still calls that the lobby scene, and you know exactly what they're talking about. And it ends with that beautiful, like liquid fire blasting in, and
from the elevator. Well, from the elevator when it drops.
Yeah.
Well, I especially like when Trinity. You see the close-up of her foot, and she steps up and she slips and she turns her foot and it slides, and then the gun bounces off the ground, and then she just I love that. It again it is the choreography of the scene, but yeah, watching it last night or the other day in prep, it did bother me. I realized that like Dean, I was like these people, like, are they supposed to be trying to free everyone, and yet. Yeah. How do they distinct? Are these people too far gone? Maybe within who knows? Right. I mean, I have no idea. We don't know. But yeah, it's just to Nick's point. Now, it's unfortunate if that is the reason, just to showcase the violence, in that sense. But yeah.
Now here's another part, like at the very tail end when he's like blasting through the window and Morpheus is tied up. My wife, when we were watching it last night, she was like. He's risking Morpheus's life. He's trying to save him. Like, how does everybody's dying and he's the last one left standing, sitting there chained up? So like again, there too, you see it's like that loophole that everybody kind of looks away.
Nick, that's called movie magic.
Exactly.
How he can fire off that Gatling gun and fire it into the ground and fire it around the guy that's in the back behind everybody.
Because he's Neo. He's
he's handcuffed to a chair, but everybody else is in front of him, and everybody else gets killed. But
he's wearing his plot armor under the coat.
It's plot armor.
Plot armor.
He's got double plot armor in that case.
I love that.
Let's talk about some of the performances. We talked a lot about some of these issues, but I think we need to talk about like Lawrence Fishburne.
He's great.
Like I said, he was just like kind of a forgotten guy in the 90s. Like he really hadn't done. Too much, and all of a sudden he pops up in this film, and it's kind of like, wow, like what a revelation he was. He had that air of confidence that Morpheus had. He had a look in his eyes when he would talk to Neo that he sold that whole belief, and even the oracles, like they kind of Morpheus needed heard what he needed to hear, and he had that unwavering belief that he was the one, and dispensing the philosophy, if you really saw what you saw, did you really see, like that type of stuff. But the way he delivers it, you kind of understand it. It's not smoke and mirrors. It's kind of explained in a way that you're like, yeah, Okay.
Yeah. Apparently, the direction given to him was based on Morpheus from the Sandman comics, which I don't know if it's in frame, but I've got the full collection back there.
Nice.
It is now.
Since a fan. But he's the king of dreams, the Greek god of dreams, the guy who shapes what you think of and can imagine and can face and creates nightmares for the purpose of letting you know what to be afraid of and how to fight it. And it's this booming voice where if that guy was talking on the subway, even if it's this crazy philosophical stuff, I wouldn't be like, oh, that guy's nuts. I would be like, kind of want to hear where this is going.
Yeah.
He brought that gravitas to the cast, because Carrie-Anne Moss had the thankless job of being, a puppy, love-struck puppy love. Like I knew I was told I was going to fall in love with the one. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But she's great. She's great. I mean, she handled all the action stuff. She looks fantastic. Like
up to that scene in the movie. That's the thing that I think again is somewhat dated. She's just sort of stuck in that role of being the female sidekick. There's always got to be that subservient sort of level.
Yep.
Where she's at, and it's a shame because throughout, the first half of the movie, she's a strong. She knows how to take care of herself, and she even when she gives Neo, and tells him to go to hell, like we're gonna, we need to save this guy, and if you're not gonna help me, if whatever, then you can just whatever. But then later on, it's like, oh, I love you, and like, yeah, it doesn't quite match up in there. So there's moments that don't age well in this film, unfortunately.
And you wonder how much the studio maybe was like, you need to kind of, because there was a lot of things the Wachowskis wanted to do that they were like, okay, we buy in, but you can't go that far. Like I think they wanted to have, like they were playing with some like transgender stuff where they wanted some players to be male in the real world and then female. I think they wanted switch,
in the Matrix.
And they were even thinking of casting Sandra Bullock or someone as Neo at one point. Where it would be a guy and then like their avatar would be a woman action figure. But the studio wouldn't go with that. They were like, that's a little too far. Not what we want.
So here's a question: If Trinity was destined and it was foretold and prophesized that she would fall in love with Neo, what if Neo was played by Val Kilmer in his asshole mode in the '90s, where he was just nasty to everybody? She's going to fall in love with him? Kilmer was wrecking movie sets across the nation with his attitude and how he was acting. She's going to fall in love with him. She got the very nice and sedate Keanu Reeves to fall in love with. He
wasn't cast.
Yes, he's very vanilla, easy to fall in love with. Beautiful eyes. What I loved about the beginning of the Matrix is once they free Neo from his little cocoonish thing. That was disgusting, by the way. He's got all those like plugs, and they're like,
shaved his eyebrows for the part. At that point,
popping out of his back. But what I really loved was how they handled the passage of time. They didn't tell you how much time has passed. Yeah. You could just see his hair growing back in.
Yeah.
So you could tell how much time was going by. He was totally bald, and he's got like a little peach fuzz, and you're like, well, that's about a month. That takes about a month to grow back. I loved how they just kind of subtly did that. Like he didn't have long hair all of a sudden. He had like kind of short hair starting to grow back in, and you could be like, oh, okay, this wasn't a week. It wasn't 2 weeks. This was like a long time of him recovering and them healing all the wounds from like all the inputs that he had and everything. So I kind of dug that they just kind of subtly let you pick up on that without saying 3 months later or,
Yeah,
like
I think that,
you kind of went through the process.
I think that whole aspect of the real world, quote unquote, that's what's so surreal about it. I mean, we don't really know where they are. This ship is kind of hovering where? It's like it's a subterranean sort of sewer.
Yeah, like underground somewhere.
Where are they? It's like we don't get a sense of the geography of this of the world. They show you that the buildings and stuff on the surface or whatever, but it's so nightmarish because you you don't know where you're at. And this is the real world that they're living in. So, and it seems like it's right out of a nightmare, so it feels, I love the juxtaposition between what we think of the real world and how things, it's like living in hell or something. I don't know. Yeah. It does take me back to Dark City, which came out a year before. So it kind of had that same feel where the guy, he reacts to what's really happening, and you find out that these beings are aliens, and it just has that same look, that leather clad, like it's almost like the Borg. Even you can even put that in there.
I was going to mention Dark City after you mentioned at the beginning, because I think I think the rooftop scene was used in the movie. So there's speculation if it takes place in the same universe, because there is some overlap in themes in both movies. Yeah, you said underrated film, really a great film.
Yeah, they did use some of the sets from Dark City because it was filmed in New Zealand as well. So, so yeah, I think some people were kind of complaining about that too. It's like, oh, you used Dark City. I think it was a watershed moment, and I haven't revisited this film since. Like, it's not something I go back to, but it was so important at the time that I was glad to kind of put myself back into that. I try and put myself back into the time. I try not to be too cynical, and I try and remember how I felt when it came out. And I think it's important, because it's easy to look through the lens of time now and be like, oh yeah, it's this, it's that, and this is horrible. But since this came out in '99, the world was a much, like Kevin said, it was a much different place, and things that kind of you got away with in film, and it still was kind of anything goes, was really what it was. But the fact that they were able to kind of pull this whole thing together again with the effects that they were. Speaking of the effects, I'm going to tell you, I think one more thing that got stolen when I was watching those, I don't know what they call it. They're the things that invade the ship.
Sentinels.
The Sentinels.
Yeah.
I think Sam Raimi got his Doc Ock. I think he got his Doc Ock right there. I saw like the tentacles kind of going like this. I'm like, I think Sam Raimi, that's where he got his Doc Ock right there. I was like, because I hadn't seen that in so long, and those effects were okay. But I was like, yeah, there it is right there. So like Eric said, after this, you started getting all the knockoffs, all, video games started to kind of try to impersonate, kind of replicate it to, it did kind of have much like, Pulp Fiction or T2 or Jurassic Park. It had that ripple effect afterwards of, here's another demarcation point in special effects of what we could do. And it wasn't anything fancy. It wasn't CG. Like Kevin said, it was lining up cameras and getting them all to sync. So it was actually something very practical, as opposed to we need to mock this up and we need to model it and do all this craziness with it. It was kind of, it was like, let's put all these cameras, sync them up and have photographs taken, and we'll make it into like a film. So it was pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. We talked about the cast. We pretty much went through that. Joe Pantoliano, again, he's just good at that scumbaggy stuff. He's probably he's probably the original James Spader prototype. He was like the kind of, I think in Risky Business, he was the pimp, right? And so I think he's kind of set the blueprint for that kind of thing. And then he was in Memento, and he was he was a man of questionable motives. You don't really know, but. So when you see him, he kind of dropped off though. I'm wearing this in honor of him. He wore a lot of these kind of scully caps, but he kind of dropped off. A lot of these people, Carrie-Anne Moss kind of didn't parlay it. Also, she kind of, a lot of these people just kind of didn't. Even Keanu Reeves after this, it kind of waned. Like he was doing November Rain, or I don't know. He was doing all kinds of weird. The Lake House. It seemed like everybody kind of bobbed up for this film. Maybe Lawrence Fishburne probably parlayed the most out of it. What do you think?
Yeah. Pantoliano had The Sopranos. Like
that's true.
2004, 2005.
Ralphie Cifaretto.
Ralphie Cifaretto. That's kind of the last thing I remember noticing him in. But it's funny watching this, knowing he's a villain, how early you notice he's a creep. Like I think the first time I saw it, it didn't really mean anything, but the guy's creepy, and you can tell the rest of the crew is like, ugh, don't leave me alone with him.
Especially when he jumps on Trinity when she's like out, when she's like plugged in. I'm like, oh boy, I'm like, Don't, Joe, don't.
And Carrie Ann Moss was on a show on AMC called Humans, and she was like an AI developer. It was an absolute callback. But other than that, once again, like she was in the latest sequel, but disappeared.
Again, something they could have done. They could have done without.
Well, Keanu's doing okay with John Wick. I mean, he's
back.
He has found a whole other second or third or fourth wind in his career. He really has had the staying power, and he seems to be a genuinely nice guy. So he kind of he kind of stuck through thin and thin. Like I said, he used to get his acting in the 90s was very questionable. I mean, for every decent role, there was 3 that he was just wooden. You could have put him next to Dracula's Pine Box and you wouldn't known who was who. Like he really was. I mean, but he has just stayed the course. He's kept it. He did The Replacements, that stupid baseball film. I mean, but the guy just kind of kept with it. And then John Wick, it was again, it's a role that does not a lot of talking. Right. It's a role where it's just I remember I saw John Wick. I'm like, holy crap! Like, how many different ways can he kill somebody? With the same gun, it's like everyone's getting popped at close range. It reminded me of Kingsman, which we should do an episode on the Kingsman.
Oh, I'm in for that one.
Yeah, Eric, did you ever see Kingsman?
I did, the first one.
Yeah, first one. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Mm-hmm. We'll have to. I think we should do Kingsman. It's kind of a nice. I think Matthew Vaughn takes a lot of things from The Matrix and kind of uses it in Kingsman. He actually kind of uses that bullet time actually. Yeah. Now that I think about it, in that church scene with which is an amazingly choreographed scene. That's like John Wick meets bullet time. But yeah, the influences are felt far and wide. So let's talk about some favorite scenes as we kind of wind down. If there are, if it's too much, I'm not sure. Nick, what do you?
One of my favorite writers of all time was Harlan Ellison. So one of the influences that inspired this, there's a short story or a novella called "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream." So can you imagine what scene inspired that? It's the scene where he gives him the finger and he's like, "I want my phone call." And then the great line, "Tell me, Mr. Anderson, what good is a phone call if you're unable to speak?" And then his mouth disappears and he's trying to scream. I love that scene. I think that's just brilliant. And of course, inspired by Harlan Ellison. So it's a great story. If you've never read "I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream," hunt it down. It's great.
Cool. Excellent. Kevin?
So the first time Neo goes into the simulator, and this it signals something wider. There's just something different about the image, and then you realize this. I think was the first time I noticed color correct or color grading as narrative device, because when they're in the Matrix, there's a green tint to everything, and you kind of notice it. And then when they're in the real world, there's a blue tint. It's cool. There's no sunlight. But when they're inside the simulator, like when they're getting the guns, when they're training, it's beautiful. It's like just perfect, crystal clear. And it's like something's been removed from your eyes. Like the shades have been taken off. And it's just such like then it happened with like traffic, and they do it on TV all the time. It's like, it's yellow, it's in Mexico. It's blue, it's in Cincinnati. This was the first time that I'm aware of it, where it's just there's this subtle signal that there's something else going on, and you're aware of it, but you don't know why. So just that like clarity.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I guess maybe for the viewer that lets you know that you're not in the Matrix, because the people in the Matrix don't notice that, right? So that might be a subtle way of involving the viewer. Is if you notice that, then you notice that there's something askew. Yeah. That there's something not quite right, but the people that don't notice it, well, then you're probably part of the Matrix if you don't realize it, right? So there you go. Eric, what do you got?
I think that probably my favorite scene is when Neo meets Morpheus for the first time. But before that, he gets in the car and then they take the bug out of him.
Oh, yeah.
That I guess that's kind of like I guess you could say that it's a nod to Alien or something, or something to that, But I love this. I love the moment where he's just like, I'm out. I can't do this, whatever. And she's like, there's something about that scene where he's looking down that road. I don't know what it is about it, but it gives me a sense of dread, a sense of like, loneliness. It's like, it really hits you. Like he's looking down this deserted street down you've been down that road, where it ends, and exactly what she's talking about. I don't know what it is, but you just feel it. And I don't know why, but it just hits me, every time I see that scene with the rain teeming down and the noirish aspect of it, it just really, that really gets me. And then of course he just joins the ride, as it were, but from that point on, he's in, so, and he knows, it kind of hit him. But I don't know. I love backgrounds, things like that. Just really, as Kevin pointed out, as a narrative flow or narrative effect. Certain, sets or location shooting or whatever it is. I don't know where they shot that, but it was it was very effective.
Yeah.
So that it's. I mean, I have several favorite scenes, but that scene, I had to point that out because it occurred to me the other night when I was watching it. I was like, man, I feel lonely. I feel cold right now. I'm just like, I just want to just curl up and die right now. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what it is, but yeah.
You know where the road leads you.
Yeah. I don't know. Just, but yeah.
I'm going to go out on everybody here is so cerebral with their picks. Everything's so highfalutin. And, Kevin's talking about color grading and the emotional response he gets. And Nick is talking about authors and Eric is talking about having his heart tore out. I'm going to talk about when they're going down before the bathroom scene, when they're trying to get out of the building and they're climbing down between the walls.
Oh yeah.
So it's very claustrophobic and they're trying to shimmy down. And Joe Pantoliano sneezes, and the guy, the police guy or whatever, he's like, oh, they're behind the wall. And when Morpheus decides to like sacrifice himself, only because Lawrence Fishburne is a really big guy, and we got to see some really nice fight choreography with him too. Like that was his scene. It wasn't the simulator. It was like him fighting for his life and fighting those guys to because of Neo, to save Neo. And Neo at the time was like, he had been told that he wasn't the one, right? Because he had already seen the Oracle. So he was like, don't do it because, there's no reason to. I'm not the one. So what, but his belief was so strong, and he like broke through the tile, like Lawrence Fishburne like broke through the tile, and then he's just like fighting all those guys. It was just a nice traditional action scene in a movie with all the eye popping stuff you could have chosen. I really just it was a well choreographed, but it was a good motivational scene for the character. And Neo also kind of saw, okay, these people are willing to die for me. I think that was just another layer, another brick in the foundation of him kind of, believing. Cause he said that to the Oracle, because, Morpheus almost had me believe in it, so they kind of almost had to do a reset with Neo and kind of get him back to believing that he could do this. And it was because of Morpheus's like unwavering devotion to to that idea that he's the one. So, and it was great just to see Lawrence Fishburne just kind of go at it. He did a really good job. Like he's got more of a brawny fighting style. So I kind of like that. And I mean, it eventually gets the crap kicked out of him, but it was still great to see that.
The fight choreography was amazing. And I read somewhere that they really tailored it to each performer's style. Yeah. Right. So Trinity was more graceful. Lawrence Fishburne was much more like kind of a solid, so it was like things like that. You notice it's like, because everybody doesn't fight the same, you look at, and when you see movies where everybody's got the same rhythms, it's like not realistic. This really felt like something special,
Yeah, and they all got the same stuff downloaded, but it's interesting what they chose as
their strengths and weaknesses.
What's comfortable for them, what fighting style. So it's great. All in all, a great film. If you've never seen The Matrix, it's on HBO Max or just Max, whatever it's called this month. It'll just be called Pay for Movies soon. It'll be called $13.99 a month.
I would watch it on Hulu instead, because the audio levels on Max, there's something messed up.
Yeah, I agree. I watched.
I love the track.
I just got it on 4K, so I watched
Good.
physical media. I had, can't beat it, so I just watched it there. And it looks
Yeah.
amazing, by the way. In fact, almost too good, because there are certain effect shots that are, especially the scene where he dives into Agent Smith and when he like explodes.
Yeah.
That's like lawnmower man effects right there. when you like the pieces, like the jigsaw pieces,
Yeah.
and it's kind of wonky there. But other than that, yeah, it's pretty. I highly recommend seeing it in 4K, because it's the blacks and it really the contrast really pops. So yeah, it's
Cool.
great. Yeah.
Cool. Eric and Kevin are going to have a new podcast about film saturation in physical media, and then Nick and I will just talk about authors we like.
There we go.
Awesome. Well done. That's going to do it for this episode of the 3324 podcast, talking about The Matrix from 1999. Again, just
good year movies.
I feel bad, for all the people. Just a quick aside, for all the people that grew up with John Wick, and they've grown up with those films. Again, like we were so fortunate to have been around for these watershed moments and to experience them when we saw when we were living in an age of what was before. Now, like Kevin said, anything goes. Between what Marvel does and between what Lucasfilm does with like Mandalorian with the screens, and it's a whole other ball game. But we were still living in that era of CG could be pretty crappy and it could be good, and then there were still practical elements, and it was such a great experience to be a part of a movie going era.
Can I say one thing too?
I'm not done. What do you mean? Can I say one?
Because
wow. You know what, Nick? You're like the guy with the knife stabbing tires on Central Avenue.
No, it's true.
Go ahead, Nick.
But no, because Kevin said it, and it's piggybacking on what you're saying now. It's like nobody's going to experience going into a movie now where it's like they are blown away. They're like, how did they do that? When I took screenwriting classes in college, it was always like, you got to think about how it's going to be done. When I do theater and you write a play, it's like practically they have to build a set. How are they going to do it? Nowadays, it's like CGI. You can do anything. So any story, and that also takes the audience out of it, because they don't. It's kind of like a different sense of belief. When you watch this movie, you were like, "Holy crap! Look at this! They're twisting reality." So anyway, carry on.
I think everything today you kind of come to expect that it's going to look great, and when it doesn't, God forbid it doesn't. People are tearing it apart, but sometimes, filmmakers go out of their way to get that back, to, that sense of craft, that sense of practicality. And people are disappointed by that today, I feel like. And I'm not saying this to be, our stuff is better necessarily, but on the other hand, it's like, I miss those days of when things did look wonky, but you know what? You loved it anyway, because you appreciated the work that went into it. You know what I mean? And, so,
there's that famous story when Martin Scorsese was filming Gangs of New York, and George Lucas came to visit the set, and Martin Scorsese had all this stuff built out. He had all the sets, and George Lucas is like, Marty, you could just do this you don't need to build all this. Like, you could do it with a green screen. That kind of epitomized like the divide right there, right? That there is a craft to modern filmmaking, and there is a craft to it, but there's also a craft, like Eric is advocating for, and Martin Scorsese, of doing things the way you've learned or what feels comfortable. And there nothing can replicate building a real set like in Tombstone, and having those real things that you interact with.
I feel like, Nick, you guys, I mean, you're an actor. You understand that. I mean, I don't know if you've ever experienced working with green screen or anything like that, but I mean, I just feel like you have to have a sense of bearing, a sense of something to react to. I feel. I mean, and a lot of these actors today, especially actors of an older generation, will say that they can't get, like, I think of Ian McKellen, when his experience on the Lord of the Rings films, like he was constantly in tears because he didn't know how to react to all of this,
stuff that wasn't
stuff
there.
that wasn't there, you know. And how do you know, it's a different type of,
especially when they shoot things out of sequence, and sometimes they only give actors their scenes, the pages of their scenes. You kind of don't know the context of what's happening. I mean, in the old days, they had, you'd sit in the car and you didn't know what was going to be projected behind you. And you're on stage sometimes and you have to pretend that what you're talking to is something different. Use your imagination. But yeah, it's so different now that it does kind of take it away from the actor a little bit. They're kind of just like, where do you need me to stand? Where's my mark? What am I looking at? What's it going to be in post? I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
or you could just have a guy with a big Jar Jar Binks mask head on top, so you know where to look up. So you know where to look up where his eyes are. I mean,
or tennis ball.
Put the actor in, and then have the Jar Jar Binks head above it, and then you just kind of look at it.
I guess in a way, it kind of gives an actor, I think, a little bit. I guess you have to imagine what it's going to look like. So I guess that adds to the performance, but I guess it all depends on what it's going to be.
And if you're in the hands of a good director, like I'm sure, like, Christopher Nolan or something like that, you trust them. And then when you go see the movie, a lot of actors don't like to see their performances on screen. But if, seeing this for the first time, you're like, wow,
because you didn't even see any of that. Yeah, you didn't see it.
So yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Literally. Okay, cool. All right. Sorry for that. That's like, consider the last 15 minutes like a bonus episode. We're gonna leave it in, but it was, we talked about filmmaking. We talked about the art of filmmaking. We diverted, which is great, but that's a freebie. There's no charge. There's never any charge for our podcast anyway. So that was a Christmas bonus for everybody that's still with us. But it's great. We could probably talk for another hour about this stuff, and that's the beauty of what we do here, is we're so passionate about it and we love talking about it. And one thing leads to another, and we should probably do a freeform show at some point where we just kind of start somewhere and then see where we end. And then at the end recap and say, well, we actually started at, drinking bourbon in films, actors. And then we ended up at, World War II or something. Anyway, enough digression. We're putting a bow on this one for everybody. So Nick Leshy, City of Kick blog, we're going to drop a link into the show notes. Again, please go check him out. Nick, thank you so much. So great to always have you on. If you're listening to this episode before January of 2024, cross your fingers for Mr. Kevin Howard, that he gets that Emmy to add to that hardware shelf he has prominently displayed in the back. I'm surprised there's not a key light on that. That you don't have a spotlight on that in the back. But
we'll watch if this is before January 7th, that's the night of the Creative Arts Emmys. They will be on FXX if you want to watch at home that Sunday night.
Will you be there?
I will be there.
Where are they having this
in the closet? It's at the Peacock Theater in LA.
Okay. Well, then we will have. Actually, they're going to announce you, so they're going to have. Are you going to have someone who's going to be your seat holder? Ben Stiller?
I don't know. We haven't seen the seating arrangements yet, so I'm excited to see who goes where.
Cool. Well, we're going to look forward to that. We're absolutely going to be pulling for you, because then I want to be able to say Emmy award-winning guest of the 3324 podcast. So, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you, guys.
We're going to have you have you back on, no matter what, because you got a bunch of hardware back there anyway that we can kind of. I'm squinting. I'm gonna still frame some of this. I'm gonna look at some of those. So
sure.
Anyway, thank you so much, Kevin. Thank you, Nick, and of course, Eric and I are your genial hosts. Belly up to the bar whenever you want in our podcast. There's a bunch of stuff you can go back to listen to and check out and enjoy as well. So for Nick, for Kevin, and for Eric, this is Dean asking you to please, because it was the VHS era in 1999. Please be kind and rewind.